This is a spoiler warning for those who haven't seen the film Monster House. I am about to spoilerize the whole thing, so you've been warned.
Uh-oh!
Was that the bite of 87?
The 2006 animated film Monster House has developed a cult following over the years, despite only receiving lukewarm reviews upon release and performing modestly well at the box office. It was a fever dream of a film that took the concept of a creepy monster hiding inside a haunted house and just said, "F it," and made the house itself the monster. This concept alone was enough to capture my imagination as a kid, so much so that both the film and the video game consumed my life for about a weekend. But then that was kind of it. I moved on with my life and never felt a desire to return to this suburban neighborhood with a creepy house. Monster House has, to me, always represented a very specific time in my life, one that I've been apprehensive about revisiting as I worry about tainting the memory of something that I used to love. But then again, the film forced its main characters to conquer their fears against a seemingly undefeatable horror, so maybe I can too. Hi, I'm JJ, the Zillennial, and welcome back to Spooky Month. Today, I'm going to revisit the film Monster House, and in a follow-up part 2 to this video, I'll be covering the video game adaptations released on GameCube, PS2, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. Cause honestly, I can't talk about Monster House and not also talk about the video games. So with all that out of the way, let's talk. The initial idea for the film came from director Gil Keenan, which was originally based on Pac-Man of all things, with Rob Schrab and Dan Harmon of all people, yes, that Dan,
I'm Pickle Rick!
Teaming up to write the first script for the film. This initial script lacked many of the ideas that would eventually become part of the final film. Meanwhile, fresh off of directing The Polar Express, a film remembered for its, unique animation, Robert Zemeckis, along with Steven Spielberg, saw potential in this idea and came on as producers. With Steven Spielberg's blessing and the addition of Pamela Pettler, known for her work on The Corpse Bride, Monster House went into production in 2004 and would indeed go on to become the 30th highest grossing film of 2006. 19 spots behind the Adam Sandler classic Click. Oh boy. This premise is one of those things that you just get right from the title, like, I see. It is a monster that is also a house. But with some genuine talent behind the production, this simple idea was converted into a 90-minute runtime, and the end result was something that's regarded as being more fondly remembered than the rest of the Imageworks lineup of animated films. Something that isn't hard to do, and one of said other films is Mars Needs Moms.
Oh my God, what's wrong with your face?
So with all this talent behind the film, how did it turn out? Monster House opens up on a title that just assaults you, which I do respect the simplicity here. We don't really get opening credits like this anymore, and the score elevates it to a whole new level. It really sets a classic horror sort of tone. We open up on the image of a leaf, before a gentle breeze picks it up and flies it alongside a young girl riding her tricycle through the suburbs in the fall. All of a sudden, she stops. The leaf is all we see for a moment, before we see that the girl is stuck. In comes the reveal of the house, and the leaf, still our focus, gently glides up to the house. There's tension, until it's finally released, when this old guy pops out. This Gollum-looking motherfucker is Old Man Nevercracker. Am I allowed to say that? This gringo is played by Steve Buscemi. He's not very nice.
Trespasser! Do you want to be eaten alive?
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
After terrorizing this young girl, stealing her tricycle, and breaking it in half, he then retreats back into his house, but not before giving us a creepy look that seamlessly transitions to our protagonist, DJ, played by pop star Mitchell Musso. So before we continue, this is a hell of an introduction that works because it builds tension, wordlessly conveys a lot of information, and it's just shot really nice. Chef's kiss, this is cinema right here, like unironically. And this is DJ. His hobbies consist of peeing in bottles and stalking old men.
We've talked about this. You cannot stay up in your room all day staring at an old man through a telescope.
After his parents leave town for some sort of oral conference, I guess, DJ's best friend Chowder shows up and they talk about the deep existential dread of thinking you're too old to go trick-or-treating. Chowder shoots a hoop but makes a big oopsie and his ball ends up on Nevercracker's lawn. DJ's plan to get the ball back doesn't go very well. He forgets that he's capable of running, and Old Man Nevercracker literally has a heart attack on top of him and dies. Nevercracker is whisked away and his house's chimney starts to release some smoke. Is no one concerned about the fire hazard? You're just gonna... okay. Not long after, DJ starts to notice some suspicious behavior coming from the house, and suspects that Old Man Nevercracker is now haunting him. His suspicions seem to be proven correct when the house just straight up comes to life and nearly eats his bestie.
You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Recognizing the danger this poses to the neighborhood, especially with Halloween being tomorrow, DJ, Chowder, and a girl named Jenny band together to come up with a plan to kill the house. So the plot is pretty basic, as are the characters, who fall neatly into usual archetypes. As was very common in the 2000s, our main trio consists of a heroic main character, a goofy male best friend, and the girl who's a lot more refined and smarter than these stinky little boys. DJ, played by Mitchell Musso, only really has one goal, which is to kill the monster house and overcome the guilt that he feels over thinking that he killed an old man. Chowder is kind of annoying, but he does get a few moments to shine.
Just sits there waiting, mocking us with its louseness.
Jenny is the more mature of the three, who hasn't even known the other two for a full 24 hours by the end of the film. She only hangs out with DJ and Chowder because they all have a common goal.
Normally I don't spend time with guys like you, but a house just tried to eat me, so you've got 1 hour.
But by the end, she starts to get a little crush on DJ, so that's a thing.
I kissed a girl. I kissed a girl on the lips.
We do have other characters, but they don't spend very much time in the film. DJ's babysitter Z, who's basically a Timmy and Vicky sort of situation, her boyfriend Bones, who gets gobbled up by the house pretty early on, Napoleon Dynamite, who's playing an epic gamer.
Calm down, you make me want to throw up in some tinfoil and eat it.
And these two cops that get eaten by the house. That's right, Monster House said fuck the police. There's also DJ's parents, who appear at the beginning and end of the film. The true star of the film is the titular Monster House. In a shocking turn of events, we learn that the house's pronouns are she, her, possibly it. I don't know if she's cool with that one, but let's just go with it. She's not the spirit of Old Man Nevercracker, but is instead the spirit of his late wife, Constance, who had the tragic backstory of being a victim of fat shaming, which resulted in her belonging to a circus for a period of time. Nevercracker, who quickly fell in love with her, decided to break her out, and they began to build a house together. But then everything changed when a couple of asshole kids attacked, and in a fit of frustration, Constance fell and got covered in cement, dying and fusing her spirit with the house. Huh. Yeah, don't think about it too hard. Nevercracker has become crusty and lashes out at kids, not because he's an asshole, but he does it as a way to ward them off and keep them safe from Constance. He's basically dedicated his whole life to protecting the neighborhood and protecting Constance herself from being harassed. This is just the life that he has to live now, even though it makes other people hate him. But of course, with Nevercracker being out of the picture for one night, Constance begins to act a little more paranormal and decides to start tormenting the trio, unleashing her full
Louseness.
It's a pretty gradual build-up. At first, we only see small hints of the house being alive, but little by little, her true capabilities are revealed, and by the end, she even lifts herself out of the ground and gives chase to our main characters.
You've been a bad girl, haven't you?
While she doesn't speak, she does enjoy long walks on the beach, tormenting children, and even has social awareness, assuming normal house form whenever any adults are around. Fun fact, adults in this film are useless, just like real life.
So much for relying on the government.
Yeah, I know, I hate the government, dude, we're screwed.
And the only adults that actually kind of help out our main trio are a sweaty gamer and an old man. While the bulk of interactions that we see happening in this film happen from DJ's house that's conveniently right across the street from the monster house, we do eventually spend some time inside the house.
Damn, bitch, you live like this?
This section is brief, but highlights some unique animation and lets us get a better understanding of the inner workings of the house.
If those are the teeth, and that's the tongue, then that must be the uvula.
So it's a girl house.
Oh sure, we laugh at Chowder now, but there are plenty of grown men who don't even know where to find the clip. The true creativity of the filmmakers really gets to shine in the final act, when the concept is taken to its logical extremes. To continue talking about the house more necessitates a discussion on this film's visuals, which are, I would argue, a vital part of its identity. See, the 2000s were an experimental time for CG animation, which by this point had completely overtaken hand-drawn 2D animation. Realism was the big thing everybody was aiming for, and the motion capture style of animation pioneered by Image Mover Studios was part of an attempt to be as realistic as possible by capturing the raw performance of an actor on a soundstage covered in boba balls. Unfortunately, for as impressive and advanced as it was, early 2000s tech wasn't exactly capable of perfectly simulating reality.
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would.
Monster House is a film made using most of the same animation techniques, but manages to look better than these other films, I would argue, for a few key reasons. For one, the look of the film is a lot more stylized. These animated characters look more like something sculpted from clay, rather than a PS3 game that needed more time to render. Because they aren't tracking the faces of actors and mapping them onto a model, the facial animations are a lot more fine-tuned. It does still have some of the jank that you would recognize in these other films, particularly when it comes to the movement. Luckily for this film, it's actively trying to be creepy. So when the characters look and move a bit in this uncanny valley zone, it kind of fits the world and the tone. I personally got used to it pretty quickly. And honestly, having had time to sit with Monster House for a while, I think it's impossible for me to imagine this movie looking any other way and still retaining its identity and effectiveness in the areas where it does succeed, aside from possibly stop motion. If you gave the script to Laika, I believe that they could have made an incredible looking version. But that also sounds like a nightmare to animate. Could you imagine trying to animate this house in stop motion? That just sounds awful. And I want animators to be able to go home and spend time with their family, so I'm okay with this not existing. A fun fact about the film's production is that when the original script was written, this was supposed to be a live action film, and I'm glad this wasn't the case. 3D animation feels like the best fit for this specific story. This is exactly how the film was meant to be, and the spooks are all the better for it. Speaking of spooks, Monster House may not be piss your pants scary, but there are more than a few instances of good, effective horror, at least as much as you can get away with for a PG movie. And while I did come out of that theater as an 8-year-old largely unscathed, I'm sure a lot of other kids were pretty affected by some of the horror in this film. The scene where Nebbercracker collapses on DJ is a start, especially with how uncomfortably close the camera gets to his face, but not long after that, we get this scene where DJ is having a nightmare. And this little nightmare is creepy enough on its own, but then we get an even more effective moment, where DJ gets a mysterious phone call. He hears faint breathing that doesn't respond to him. Believing that it's just a prank call, he decides to call the number back, but soon realizes that he's hearing ringing coming from inside the house. That's pretty creepy. But then of course the babysitter's boyfriend has to ruin the scene with a jump scare. There's also the whole sequence where the house actually manages to eat the kids, which ultimately leads to this scene right here, where the trio discovers Constance's cement-covered corpse. That is a really hard sentence to say, oh my god. To make this scene even more uncomfortable, DJ trips, landing nose first on her nose, crumbling the cement and revealing a skeleton underneath.
Now that's what I call spooky.
Once the kids are able to escape from the house and the spooks are largely over, we then get the revelation that Nebbercracker is still alive and that Constance was the true Monster House all along. We get a little bit of backstory, and then the film dives headfirst into a big, action-packed climax for the final act, complete with a chase, you haven't even seen my final form, and a big explosion to cap things off. The final act is a real highlight of the film, and a big part of what makes it really stand out to me is the soundtrack, composed by Douglas Pipes. What a name. He's composed for films such as The Babysitter, Krampus, and Barbie, Mariposa and the Fairy Princess. The soundtrack he composed for this film sounds a lot like what you would expect from Mr. Oingo Boingo Danny Elfboy himself, a mix between Danny Elfman's style and that of John Williams, but mostly Elfman. The soundtrack is pretty damn good and really memorable, honestly. I'd argue that the soundtrack is an underappreciated aspect of the film, and that's a shame because it truly does elevate this experience. I vividly remember a lot of this music despite having not seen this film in a very long time. The theme that plays during the opening credits, iconic, memorable, sets the tone. Squirrel meme. The rest of the movie, whimsical, appropriate, timeless. The big climactic action sequence at the end, I mean, come on. This is some really good music. The soundtrack is underrated, but honestly, so is the cinematography. There are some really creative and really interesting shots all throughout the film that seamlessly blend everything together. I already talked about the opening and how well I think that works, but look at some of these other clips. This transition's really neat right here. Like, look at this, look at this. This is just, wow, that's pretty awesome.
I'll show you. But if things get out of hand...
We'll aim for Bigfoot. That's loaded!
So for the last few minutes, I've been singing the praises of various aspects of this film, but I won't lie, there are a few less than stellar aspects of this production. For one, the plot is pretty basic, and the characters don't really have compelling arcs in my opinion. At least when it comes to the main trio, as their goals are clearly established right from the get-go, which is kill the house, and by the end, they accomplish that goal. The characters don't really develop on their own as much as they develop a bond with each other that becomes a bit more solidified by the end of the film. I mean, to be fair, they're just kids, but that's just it. They're still kids. And at most, DJ learns to stop being a party pooper, and he gets to enjoy his youth a little bit more by agreeing to go trick-or-treating, even though he said he wouldn't. If anything, it's Nebbercracker who gets the most character development. Perhaps the theme is that people who seem frightening on the outside are just human on the inside, with both Nebbercracker and Constance being shown some empathy by our main characters, and turning out to be the way they are because of how society treated them. Perhaps it's a commentary on unhealthy relationship dynamics. I don't know. I'll have to really think about it. Maybe by the end of the video, perhaps after the second part, I'll have something compelling to say. I don't think this movie's trying to be very deep, but there's a lot that can be interpreted if you really go digging for it. I just wish that they had treated the character of Constance with a bit more respect. For instance, while she's at the circus, the slogan that they use to market her is "the lady that's as big as a house," and then she turns out to become a house in the end. Are you fucking kidding me? During the big dramatic moment, she's kind of made to appear like she's making a big fuss out of nothing right before she falls into the pit of concrete and dies. But like, she's been traumatized, and these asshole kids are throwing rocks and eggs at her. The way this scene is edited just kind of feels like it's making fun of her, and that feels a little distasteful. But I don't know, that's just how I felt. Her reaction in this moment is completely justified. Also, I call bullshit on this fall killing her. I would assume that the cement takes a while to solidify, unless she died from the fall itself and not the cement. But I don't know. This scene kind of took place in a weird void that exists in the middle of nowhere. I would assume that there wasn't a hospital nearby at this point in time. Also, this is a specific kind of 2000s kids movie that had a little dash of edge to it, for better or worse.
DJ? You pee in bottles? What are you talking about? That one's your pee.
Well, Dad, why don't you kiss my hairy butt? Hey, DJ, got any beer?
Puberty. Yeah, I'm having lots and lots of puberty.
Good luck with the puberty.
She grabbed my butt.
That's nice, Chowder. Come here.
Yes, over here.
Are you guys mentally
Would you believe this film was nominated for an Academy Award? I know this is a 2000s movie, but the fat shaming is pretty annoying when it crops up, and it's really prominent with the character of Chowder in particular.
Hold on.
Get it? He's fat.
You got something to say, Porky, huh? Diva Diva?
Okay, why is Nebbercracker, of all people, insulting his weight? Maybe he's just out of it, I don't know. Nebbercracker is kind of inconsistent. For instance, he doesn't want to leave Constance or blow her up because she's all he has. But then after DJ does blow her up, he says,
We have been trapped for 45 years, and now we're free. We're free!
Did you want her gone or not? And while we're here, I think this is the perfect place to segue into the other major problems. Plot holes and inconsistencies. Yes, this gets its own section, because like, wow. There are so many things in this film that just flat out make no sense. Now, a lot of these are nitpicks to be fair, but listen, I've got a lot of complaints, and these are things that bothered me all the way back in 2006, when I was 8 years old. So, to start, the rules of how a person could die and have their spirit turned into a house isn't very well defined, and leaves many questions up in the air, but I won't get too into it. I'm just gonna headcanon this being set in the same universe as Encanto, and I will take no further questions on the matter. During the flashback, why is this area all desert when we later see it full of trees? How the fuck did these kids get here? There's literally nothing around. This starts to get into a bigger issue that I like to call a lack of NPCs. Basically, while the background environments look nice, the filmmakers kind of forgot to populate these environments with people unless we actively need to see them for plot reasons. It leads to the film having a sort of purgatorial kind of vibe. I just made that up. This basically makes the world of Monster House feel small, which was already the case with its very sparse number of locations, and leads to a whole other onslaught of plot issues. The biggest one being, where are all the fucking people when the house is chasing all the kids at the end of the movie? It's literally Halloween night. Kids are running about. After the film ends, we do see a bunch of kids trick-or-treating. Like, what? How does no one hear the massive explosion that happens behind their houses? Then, when we see Nevercracker's gaping hole where his house used to be, no one questions it. No one says a goddamn thing. Not even DJ's parents. They give this little girl her tricycle back, and the mom doesn't even break out into a full Karen rant over the fact that Nevercracker stole it in the first place. But backtracking to earlier in the film, when the house is still standing, there are a lot of questions like, how is this house fooled by the dummy that they sent in to knock it out with cold medicine? Don't you hear the loud as fuck vacuum sounds? When Z comes out of the door earlier in the film, there is no way that she doesn't hear the house when it's putting itself away. And there's also no way that the house could possibly go back to a normal position in time without being noticed. There's also this bullshit with the ambulance that brings Nevercracker back. Who the hell was driving it? I doubt it was Nevercracker, and then it disappears for the final chase. Random question, when does Nevercracker find time to go grocery shopping? Does he have a single goddamn lamp in this place? And my last complaint is that the cops are still alive at the end. Okay, I'm only half joking here. I'm more so just upset about the cop-out, get it? That after the credits, we find out that everybody who was eaten during the course of the film turns out to be okay, even though they were theoretically stirring around in house goo and should have been digested by now. It honestly doesn't bother me that much, but it would have made for a more impactful ending if we just never cut to this. Hey, at least the dog's okay. So many questions, not many answers. Lots of things that just don't add up. I could honestly keep going, but I guess none of these points matter too much.
Get ready to cross over.
What are you weirdos up to?
Oh, nothing.
To the other side of the street.
Can you be scary?
What do you think of this?
Now, the party's over.
And that's most of what I have to say about the 2006 animated film Monster House. After revisiting the film, I can see why younger me was so invested in it. I think it mostly stems from a fascination with horror, largely the kind of horror that targets a younger demographic. There was a certain edge that made me feel more mature for watching this film when I was 8 years old. The cracks have shown, but my recent rewatch was a pleasant surprise. It does lack the kind of depth that a lot of my favorite childhood movies had, but the exceptional cinematography, creature design, creepy moments, and a fun, if slightly predictable mystery keeps this a pretty interesting and engaging time. It's a roller coaster ride full of scary surprises, and I'd wager that that's all kids at the time were really looking for. The empowering feeling of seeing kids kill a big monster with a stick of dynamite, that's pretty rad, dude. And I can see why it's garnered such a cult following. As long as you can get past the visual aesthetic looking kind of like a video game cutscene at times, you'll probably have a good time. Though I will admit that this film's not gonna vibe with everyone, as the Rotten Tomatoes score has shown. I know a few people in my personal life who kind of hate this movie, and I don't entirely blame them for that either. But I personally had a fun time revisiting it, and if you're one of the people out there who does enjoy it, awesome. Keep doing that. Wow, what a concept. Of course, this film was only part of the Monster House experience that I had growing up. When you were a kid, didn't you just want to really explore the inside of this house? Well, thanks to video games, you could. So, join me in part 2 of this video where I conclude my thoughts on Monster House as a whole by talking about the video games on GameCube, PS2, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. Subscribe so that you'll get the video when that goes up. Should be very soon. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a very spooky day.